The military council in Egypt is under fire after a night of deadly clashes in Cairo, with Coptic Christians at the heart of the unrest. Just why is anger growing with the generals now ruling the country? And what does the latest violence mean for the promise of democracy in post-revolution Egypt? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Hazem Sika. In one of the bloodiest nights since Hosni Mubarak was forced from power, dozens of people were killed in Cairo after a protest was attacked by security forces. Thousands of Coptic Christians were marching in the capital after the partial destruction of a church in Aswan. The ruling military council is warning of a foreign conspiracy, but it faces questions from Muslims and Christians alike as to why a peaceful demonstration was so violently crushed. Well, Egypt's interim Prime Minister Aswan Sika joined many other ministers in laying the blame for Sunday's violence on a foreign conspiracy.
The most serious threat to the country's security is tampering with national unity and the stirring of discord between Muslim and Christian sons of Egypt. It is difficult for us to consider what happened in Egypt in the past hours be due to sectarian strife, but what is for certain is that it is one of the pieces of this plot.
Ever since tanks rolled onto the streets of Cairo earlier this year, the military council has been accused of dragging its feet on the transition to democracy. The army insists that it's protecting the revolution, but critics say it only wants to hold on to power. After much delay, it recently announced plans for elections over 3 phases and the writing of a new constitution. But many people are angry at the slow pace of change and the fact that issues like police impunity and the emergency law have not been addressed. Well, joining us now to talk more about this are our guests from Cairo, Amr Abdelmoniem, a political activist and member of the Roxy coalition, a political party and movement in Egypt. And from London, we have Nabila Ramdani, a Middle East analyst. I want to welcome both of you to the program. Amr Abdelmoniem, if I could start with you. The latest violence that we saw on Sunday night, what does this suggest to you about the state of Egypt's revolution?
It represents an event which influences the relation between Christian people as Egyptian people and the military council, and we are not sure that this is the right way to express our opinions, and also the pressure of the Christian people or the Christian Egyptian people before the revolution consider this is a pressure and more pressure, and they express their opinion in front of Maspero building to show for the whole world that they have their demands. They need support from the military council. We respect their feelings, but we don't think that this is the right way to express our opinion.
Well, you say this isn't the right way to express their voice. The protesters who were there last night say that this began as a peaceful protest and that this was their intention from the beginning. The violence flared only when they were attacked. So doesn't that suggest to you that there are other forces at work here?
The military council doesn't attack or didn't attack anybody before. So how do they attack the Christian when they express their opinion? I don't think so. This is the situation. There is some insider inside the story. There is some people who needs or who wants to make disturbance in Egypt. We don't think that they will succeed in this, and we believe that Christian and Muslim in Egypt are very in a friendly way, and they have the proper channel to express themselves, to express their opinion. In Roxy, we feel that we are in the same boat. We have to reach somehow a settlement and leave the political people work in the political field, leave the economical people work in the field of economics, and this is to reach the settlement. If we have a parliament, we have a president, and we have construction, everything will settle down, and everybody is in a hurry with his demand for the time being, and this is, it's a matter of time, will be fixed after that.
All right, at this point, we're going to bring in a guest of ours on the phone. We have Michael Meunier, who's a Coptic political activist and lobbyist. Michael is the founder of Alhayat political party in Egypt. Michael, thank you for being with us. Clearly, the Coptic community in Egypt has a long list of grievances which they say have not been addressed. But does this, in your view, reflect the general anger among Egyptians throughout the country about the lack of change since the revolution?
Well, I mean, definitely there is a feeling among us that everybody benefited from the revolution except the Copts, where for 1400 years not a single church has been burned or demolished, and 3 churches either burned or demolished in the last 3 months under this military council rule. Then the Copts have to feel completely disadvantaged here by the revolution, unfortunately, while many of us have participated in the making of this revolution from day one.
Nabila Ramdani, what's your view on this? Does this reflect a growing frustration with the military?
Well, I think the recent incident brought to the fore 2 significant problems, really, within Egyptian society. First of all, Christian Copts are extremely concerned about their status in Egyptian society, and indeed the level of discrimination against them by both radical Muslims and indeed the government. They have often been the victims of attacks by Muslim extremists, which are a tiny minority, but also by the government. Their freedom of worship is not respected, and their protection is not guaranteed, as has been illustrated by the way the army dealt with the recent peaceful protests. But second of all, I think it also, the recent event also highlighted the lack of will and indeed means of the army to deal with highly sensitive issues like this one. And I think there is a concern amongst Egyptians as a whole as to the ability of the army to protect its citizens. It's the #1 duty of the state to guarantee the protection of its citizens and indeed law and order. And the vast majority of the Egyptians do not see the army as being an able force to guarantee that. And that includes the vast majority of Muslims who are moderate, including the Muslim Brotherhood. I think more crucially, the vast majority of Egyptians are skeptical about how genuine the army is about the transition to democracy, and is using those religious differences to postpone a transition to democracy, and indeed to postpone the forthcoming parliamentary elections, which are due in November.
I want to turn back to Michael Meunier on this, if I can. Do you fear that the result of this latest violence that we saw on Sunday night, do you fear that anger in Egypt now will be directed against Coptic Christians or towards the military rulers, and it is really a reflection of the growing frustration with the military ruling council?
I mean, the anger so far is directed toward the military for the excessive use of force. However, the irresponsible media, and the #1 irresponsible media was the Egyptian TV, that broadcast that the Copts were burning the Quran, or the Copts were were attacking the military, etc., etc. That may generate a backlash somehow. But for the time being, I think everybody is unhappy about what the military has done. In fact, as we speak, the military refused to let the coroner issue reports for many of the victims. And they wanted to issue reports that many of the victims have died of a heart attack. And as a result, the Pope just finished the funeral prayer, and the Pope only prayed on 4 of the martyrs, and has not been able to pray on the rest of them because we refuse to get them out of the hospitals without the proper best cause. And so we can prosecute people, and the military is meddling with the process because they don't want anybody to be prosecuted. They want a coroner report to show that the people that died of heart attack. So There seemed to be anger on the street, but I don't think it's directed toward the Copts. I, however, have to realize that there are a lot of fanatic elements in the society, and the fanatic elements have been giving a leeway by the military council to go out and say whatever they say on TV, incite hatred, incite destruction of Coptic property and individuals, and putting some people on the list to be killed, etc. And no course of action has been taken against these people. So anything could happen at this stage. The country is...
And why do you think, if I could just jump in here, why do you think that is? Why do you think the military hasn't done enough? Is it because they are afraid of these extremist fanatic groups, as you call them?
I think it's a combination of things. The military may see itself weaker than the pessimists on the streets, and may be trying to appease them so it can keep the peace. For one of the people that was told by the military council after the burning of the Seoul church that the military would not like to point its guns towards a section of the society at that stage where the Salafi group will burn that church. And we accepted that. We said, okay, the military does not want to shoot at Egyptians. We'll let the peaceful solution work, and if we can get out of it with the church, that's fine. Why didn't the military council take that course of action this time? Why did they point their guns and police cars and tanks to run over people like this? This is unacceptable. It's actually unprecedented.
It's a fair question, Amr Abdelmoniem, if I could turn to you on that. Michael Meunier is saying that, suggesting that the military were particularly harsh this time around. Why do you think that is?
I don't think so, but as you know that we have a lot of problem in Egypt, not regarding the Christian people only, but the military council is suffering from political people, also suffering from the economic, suffering from a lot of factors which influence his decisions. Everybody in Egypt is in a hurry, and nobody is patient enough to wait for his demands. The military council is suffering a lot nowadays. They are doing their best. Regarding moving over, the tanks moving over the people, I don't think so that happened.
But there were clear, I mean, you say that didn't happen. There were clearly pictures that show that, and some of our staff went to the hospital and the morgue where they saw the bodies, and they said that they clearly indicated that the injuries that they suffered were the result of vehicles, in this case military vehicles, crushing the bodies. The evidence is clearly there, and we saw it in the pictures as well. So, I mean, your argument that the military was simply doing its job, doesn't that fly in the face of the facts?
I am talking about the number of the killed people. If we run by the tank over the people, we have a lot of thousands of victims. But this is not the story. I hear that it's 25 dead or something like that. If I'm wrong, let me know your numbers. But also, I am asking the Egyptian people to be patient, to wait for a while, to give the chance for the government to settle down and to have our parliament, to have our president, to have our construction, and this will make this mess vanish. And it's a matter of time. We have to be patient. Regarding burning of the church, we have a lot of buildings is burned during from the revolution until now. We have the police station has been burned. We have some mosques has been burned. There is a differences between the whole people. There is a classification which make the whole people splits into minor groups with different intensity and with different targets. So we have a lot of quarrel in each meeting. We don't have a specific pathway to go through. So I am asking the Egyptian people to stick on being patient, try to wait, try to get your president and try to get your parliament people, elected ones, and
Nabila
everything
Ramdani,
will be okay.
This latest violence, the fact that this time around that army soldiers were killed in the latest violence, do you think that this will give the military justification for further crackdowns?
No, not at all. And I think, as I was saying earlier, the number one duty of a state is to guarantee the protection of its citizens and to guarantee law and order. And that's precisely what the army is unable to do. But I think the latest incidents have to be put in a wider context of moving towards a democratic post-Mubarak era. And there are very clear signs that the army is reluctant to transition towards a democratic Egypt. For example, the Interim Military Council has recently announced that it will deny access to foreign monitoring for the forthcoming parliamentary elections. Now, Egyptians argue that this is a clear sign that, you know, the army is not genuine about fair and transparent elections, and that actually, if the army was to allow foreign people to monitor the elections, the army would be credited for it, and it would also prevent elections from being rigged, as was the case in the last parliamentary elections in 2010. Another announcement by the Interim Military Council makes it clear that it's not genuine about the democratic transition. It has announced on Saturday new punitive elections laws, which are set to control the election turnout, voting and media coverage of the elections, effectively to contain bribery, but also corruption and the broadcast of false information about the candidates, for example. Now, the Egyptians are wondering, why is there a need for new measures of this sort when existing laws already guarantee such things? And they also argue that these new punitive laws could actually be used as weapons against the Egyptians. For example, how can you prove that information is fake? And if somebody was to say that the elections were not free and fair, that person could end up being sent to a prison and indeed heavily fined. So there are very, legitimate concerns amongst the Egyptians as to how genuine the army is about the democratic transition.
Michael Meunier, what's your view on this? Some of what Nabila Ramdani was saying about these electoral laws, that this is really an excuse to tighten the screws further.
Well, nobody knows what the military council is running through in their own minds of what needs to happen in the country. But clearly, nobody's happy with the election laws. Nobody's happy with the way the election is being rushed through. Nobody's happy with the election laws changing every day. And as someone who's founding a party and traveling throughout the country, people have no idea how to vote. In fact, candidates that I was meeting with last week did not know how the list is going to work and what's the best position for them to be on, and how they should go about participating in the election. So if candidates don't understand it, political parties don't understand it, the military council is still improvising as late as yesterday, declaring some topics like Article 5 invalid or saying they're not going to use it, etc. And then we have the candidacy declaration is tomorrow. It's just beneath me how people, or how the military council expects people and political party activists to organize and to mobilize and to educate the voters on their programs, etc., and everything is still fluid. So definitely there is some consensus to influence the process.
There are also many people, Michael Meunier, who believe that the military is trying to present a perception of instability in the country to justify staying in power. Do you hold that view?
I mean, definitely. I mean, I look at everything around me, and it's very clear that this is definitely one of the options the military is looking at. In fact, if you look at how the military did or handled the 1952 revolution and the staying in power and putting up elections and cancelling the elections, you would probably come to the same conclusion that we're almost going through the same sort of thing right now in just different formats and changing the names of the people, maybe.
Amr Abdelmoniem, if I could turn back to you on this. The military has already moved, albeit rather slowly toward establishing dates for parliamentary elections, but it's given no real indication of when a constitution might be written or when a president will be elected. And that is the real fear among many Egyptians. And will the worsening security situation there only slow this process even further?
Yes, the security situation is quite bad, and we believe in something that we have to continue in democracy process, and very fast. We have some negatives, a lot of negatives. We have to bear it until we overcome or to pass the transitional period. This is after a while from election, and after a while from having a parliament and the president, we can repair anything after that. This is because we don't have the political situation only. We have also economical situation, security situation, and we need somebody to have a global overview about Egypt. We concern about Egypt. We are not talking about political benefits only. Regarding the election law, we have to go very fast. But when the military council say something, another body say no, we disagree. We have a lot of differences in all movements. So the military council is very concerned about passing this stage very quickly, and we believe in Roxy also that we need to pass it very quickly, regardless of the negatives. This will be overcome later.
Michael Meunier, just in the few minutes that we have left, despite what you saw last night, are you ultimately hopeful about the future of Egypt's revolution, or does this leave you pessimistic?
I'm actually pessimistic. I was an optimist until yesterday, and I quickly turned into a pessimist because it doesn't look like the military council is able to handle the power. Today, the military is not a referee between all the political factions and the different religious and groups and ethnic groups in Egypt. It is part of one group against the other. It actually had used its weapons against the sects of the Egyptian population, and that makes it lose its credibility to arbitrate. So it's not an independent arbitrator any longer, and this is definitely going to create a lot of problems. The only way forward, I think, in my view, is to have an independent civil council, presidential council to run the country, even if it's made up of all the current presidential candidates and many Islamists among them. But even with that, that might be better than having the military council dictating to the populace what happens, what not happen. I mean, we saw the headline in Al-Masr Al-Yawm newspaper indicating that the military council would never agree to having its commander-in-chief be appointed by a civilian.
Nabila Ramdani, same question to you in just in the minute or so that we have left. Are you ultimately hopeful that the military council is up to the job of not only restoring security to Egypt, but delivering real democracy in the end?
No, for example, the army hasn't given the Egyptians guarantees that former members of the Mubarak party, the now dissolved party, the National Democratic Party, are not going to be able to run for elections. So this is a terrifying thought for, the Egyptians. Second of all, I don't think that, soldiers are equipped to deal with highly sensitive issues like sectarian violence. And Egypt at the moment is faced with both civil and indeed sectarian violence, which is terrifying. And after the magnificent scenes on Tahrir Square after the ousting of Mubarak, it is extremely sad to see the democratic process in Egypt being compromised by the level of violence that now Egypt is faced with.
All right, we are going to have to leave it there. That's going to have to be the last word. But I want to thank all three of our guests for joining us. Amr Abdelmoniem in Cairo, Michael Meunier on the phone in Cairo, and Nabila Ramdani in London. Many thanks for your time. And thank you for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. As always, you can also join the conversation. Just email your comments and suggestions to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. The latest news is up next. Bye for now.